Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Got a couple of odd ones combined here today. I don't get many of these DA integras that come through the doors very often. And then you would, I guess, expect a B series in it, but I actually have an F20 swap. Both DA integras and cars with F20 swaps tend to both kind of give me trouble more often than not. So we're going to see what we end up with on this one. This actually came in needing a handful of things before we even got to this point. So hopefully, as a part of that, we've eliminated a majority of what can hopefully go wrong. So what we had to do up to this point was mount the fuel pressure regulator. The clutch cable needed some adjustment. I think that has a strong chance of becoming a problem. I think it might just need a new cable, which we don't have, so that might have to be something that's done down the road. I'm sure once I get in there and start driving it on the dyno, you're going to see that struggling a little bit to get in and out of gear, because the header here is, I don't know if it's bent or just the way that it fits in this particular car or what, but it's kind of like pushed up at the oil pan, and it's hitting right into the shifter. There's really no easy way to correct that issue without taking the exhaust off, cutting it, doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So we're going to hold off on that for now and see if there's anything else that we need to deal with first. So that's kind of interesting. We had to run wiring for VTEC, had to run wires for the wideband. Has an AEM wideband in there, so those seem to be a little bit hit or miss on whether they want to work properly with the ECU or not. So when this was first dropped off, I went to start it to pull it inside, and I didn't think we may not even get to the point of getting on the dyno. It was running so bad. But primary issue was the map sensor was wired incorrectly. So as far as the computer was concerned, it was seeing 10 pounds of boost the whole time. So obviously dumping a ton of fuel. The idle control valve was not wired correctly, so I had to adjust that. Had pinched O-rings for the fuel injectors. Those were leaking. A leaky fuel line going to the rail. The fuel pressure gauge does not work, so I'm actually still going to need to set the fuel pressure, and corrected all of that. Finally got it to start and run like a normal car, and couldn't get the idle to drop below about 1500 RPM. And searched and couldn't find, kind of assumed we'd have an intake leak or something like that. Couldn't find anything. Turns out this throttle body actually had a port on it that was leaking. You could pressurize it from the throttle body into the intake manifold, and everything seemed normal. So then I decided to pressurize it backwards, and sure enough, it had a big massive leak going out into the intake. So I had throttle body on and off a handful of times. Had to get creative on how to block the port, and now it's actually idling and doing what I'm telling it to do. So yeah, we'll kind of get going here and see what this wants to do. Didn't have any, it was about a gallon low on coolant, so had to put some of that in there. Gonna check the oil one last time, just put some fresh plugs in it, and I haven't had any F20s on this dyno, so I'm not sure what it's gonna make. I think actually the last F20 I had was probably on our dyno jet way back when. Jeez, now that I look at it, it looks like the crank pulley is literally resting on the frame of the car, so Might get some fireworks. Have to keep an eye on that. Huh, still has balance shaft belt on it too. Haven't seen that in quite a while. Alright, let's get started. Here's another benefit to hub dyno. If this was on a roller dyno, there'd have been no reason to check it, but it could have gotten ugly pretty quick. All of the wheels are loose and about to fall off. You can imagine that a rotor directly onto the roller on dyno jet or something like that would get torn up pretty bad in that situation. Have you ever wondered how the dyno actually connects to the car? Have a handful of these different hub adapters. And the dyno just bolts to that. 61 degrees in here and I'm freezing to death. Hopefully that doesn't mean I'm getting sick or something. That would suck. This motor is really, really quiet. It's awesome. I love it. Just letting it warm up for a little bit. Ow! And set up the scaling for the wideband, and the AEM stuff's kind of hit or miss, but this one's pretty close. I'm happy with it so far. So like 14.1 or so here, and 14.1 or so here. Yeah, it's off just a hair, so I'll probably tinker with that a little bit more. So we go here to the voltage offset. That will, that's where you would kind of clean that up a little bit. And then after you push the wrong button 100 times, come back here. 14.2, 14.2. So that's about as good as that's going to get. So the offset was about 0.2 volts. That's pretty close, but if you ever get to the point where you need to change that number a lot, then you need to revisit how you've powered and run your ground wire for the wideband. 99% of the time that's a installation kind of error. There's a ton of information online and stuff, you can search that, but this is pretty good for now. I set the timing on this about 4 or 5 different times yesterday or whatever day that was, but I wasn't able to get it to idle as nice as it is now. So now that the idle's a lot more stable, I'm going to go ahead and just resync that, make sure everything's good. This is the best timing light I've ever used, and I'm pretty sure I've had everyone out there. This broke today, I would overnight another one tomorrow. I wouldn't even consider buying anything else. I still can't believe how quiet this motor is. Usually these F and H series motors are so loud you're scared to walk near them. You're gonna get smacked in the mouth with a connecting rod or something. This is cool. So this has a F to B or H to B or whatever to be conversion kit, and the flywheel is a mark for the timing mark. So you're gonna have to do it off the cam gears, but the cam gear, the valve cover is not cut, so it's pretty hard to see. So gonna look kind of silly doing this, but it works good enough. Pretty sure that's right on the money. These marks are really hard to see. I'm actually going to shut the engine off and them again. It looks like somebody's painted all over them 20 times, so I can't see the actual mark very well. The paint marker is actually a mandatory dyno tool, ironically. Let's see what wonderful shape this one's in. It gets used every day, just about, it seems. Alright, timing is good to go, so I guess it's time to start driving it, and let's see what some steady state stuff looks like. So I'm actually not sure what transmission's in this, so I'm going to use the dyno to calculate the gear ratio. And then at that point, we'll use this screen over here, and I can set the axle speed, which will convert over to engine RPM, and then we can hold the car at whatever engine speed we want to. And I'll show how that just changes everything with part throttle tuning. Everything's set up than it is to actually tune this thing, but my big crazy fan was trying to rip the hood off of the car, so I actually kind of had to strap it down so that it doesn't fly back and smash the windshield. I think I got everything working now, so start driving it a little bit. I almost forgot I need to set the fuel pressure, so I'm just going to throw a fuel pressure sensor in it and load it up into the dyno and do it that way. So I just pulled the fuel pressure gauge out, and like literally not one drop of fuel came out. It's kind of unusual. Now I don't know what to expect with the actual sensor in there. Maybe we'll get lucky and it just seems weird, but it's normal. Let's see. So with the fuel pump on, there's no fuel coming out. This is really confusing. The car shouldn't even be able to run like this. Oh. Do they have the regulator plumb backwards? Alright, this might be a first. Let me see what they got going on here. Alright, so I've never seen this before, but from the fuel rail, I got it going to the bottom side of the regulator, and then this is going back to the fuel tank. So I need to swap these two fittings around. Hopefully the hoses and whatnot are long enough. They may or may not be, but I think I got enough there to at least hook it up, make sure it works. I got an AN style fitting in here and then not here. It looks like I'm probably just gonna have to redo all these lines, but let's see if we can make it through the dyno first. I have another car coming here shortly, so I can't let this sit on here for hours. Alright, let's see, figure out a way to make this work. Alright, so now we got about 25,000 psi of fuel pressure, which is good. Whoops. Line's broken off of here too. Probably have a fitting for that. Alright, so we're roughly 40 psi. about 43 pounds, so that's where I want that. So we'll call that good. And I'll try and see if I have a fitting to fix this broken one. This fitting was torqued to about 700 foot-pounds. I almost didn't think it was going to come out. We'll just swap it for one of these. Alright, back in business there. Let's start driving this thing and see what happens. Alright, you can see I have the dyno set to about 2,500 RPM. And see the green needle is actual RPM. Now you can see here, this is a 2,500 RPM load column. And I'm at 17 inches of vacuum, which about 6% throttle. And now the dyno, I'm going to roll into the throttle. The dyno is just going to hold it at 2,500 RPM. And then input what the air fuel is in each one of these cells. And you kind of want to let it sit there for a little while to stabilize. That's full throttle, still at 2,500 RPM. So now all of these values here at 2,500 RPM, we can see what the difference is between our target air fuel and what the actual air fuel is, which is the target air fuel is going to change with throttle position and manifold pressure. You can see this is the first run, so it's pretty far off, but we're in the 14s here in the mid-range, and then a little richer than we want to be, but up here in the full throttle range, it fattens back up, and a little further out from the target. But so we can repeat that through each one of these breakpoints: 2,500, 2,750, 3,000, 35, so on and so forth. And so you can view this different ways. I like this 2D view the most, and you can see here where I'm just kind of like trying to rough it in. Once I get into the ballpark, then I can come back through and smooth all this out and make it look nice. And that's kind of how this goes. So let me smooth this out, and we'll bump it up and try some other RPM points. Time 50 horsepower full throttle, and then real-time torque. This is just kind of cruising RPM, cruising throttle, so it's pretty close now. So whenever you see I post a video and it's showing car made 1,000 horsepower at 900 RPM. So this is engine RPM, and this is the actual axle RPM, and that's the number that you're seeing when you see that. So yeah, everyone always freaks out and thinks that dynos give you bogus numbers. It's just a different way to look at it. So I just dropped the engine speed to 2,000. by cell, and you know, you can spend hours doing this. Torque stuff with timing. I'm gonna highlight all of these. Set everything in this area to 10. And then if I undo the change, pretty big difference. And that's all without touching the throttle. Alright, I'm going to give this a minute to cool down. I just had a customer show up to drop a car off. And I'll probably need to do 1 or 2 more sweeps of this part throttle. And then we'll switch over to full throttle and start doing some actual like sweep style runs. That's where it gets a little bit more fun. Ironically, this stuff here is, I don't know, can be more entertaining to me than the full throttle stuff. You know, kind of depending on what it is and whatnot, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can play with, and this dyno just changes everything as far as figuring out what's doing what, and what's working, what's not. And you'll see when we do the full throttle stuff that we can actually monitor the dyno graph and everything real time, which I can't explain how helpful that is, especially when you're really pushing the limits of something. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that here in a few minutes. Alright, just swept all the cells up to about 4,000 RPM. I'm going to switch over to start doing some sweep runs now, but this car runs really hot. I saw the radiator fan on it earlier on and was kind of questioning how well it was going to work. So that might be an issue, but the steady state stuff demands a lot on the car for cooling, and then the sweep stuff's a whole lot easier. You know, you can set the ramps up, the runs up to only be a few seconds long, so it's not putting as much load on the car versus holding it at a given RPM. It's like you're driving up a mountain. But so far everything's working, which I'm pretty happy about, because like I say, both these DAs and these motors can fight you. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that VTEC works and we don't have any misfire problems or something like that. But if we can get through this car just in one dyno session, I'll be super happy. So the rate of acceleration, I'm going to use 120 RPM per second on this. I'm going to start at 650 axle RPM, or about 3,000 engine RPM, and then I just set the end speed higher than where I'm going to go. Last car I did was scaled for 2,000 RPM. Don't think we're going to need all of that. Computer's going in slow motion. Will be more than enough. And I'm set up to start the run at 200 horsepower, which isn't going to work for this, so I'm going to change a lot of the setup on this. I guess the last car I did must have made a lot of power. So we'll change this up and make some runs without VTEC on. This trans is so hard to put in gear. Just gonna make a short run without VTEC on. some fueling at higher RPM. Turn VTEC on and start trying to populate the high cam map. Alright, just set VTEC to come on at 4,800 RPM. Hopefully it works. These things tend to, well, for whatever reason, when they end up in swap cars, seems to not want to work all the time. Let's see what we got. It's super lean, so it's actually a good sign. Power wise, I don't know, I guess it's on track to what I was expecting. This dyno is very stingy on all motor cars. Anything less than 200 horsepower, it kind of really, I don't know, it doesn't read anywhere close to what my DynoJet would read. And you can see there's a big time delay in this graph here. I'm just remotely connected to that computer over there, so yeah, there's just working on a delay, so ignore that. Gonna need to get some screen recording software to make this easier, but it looks like about 5,500 RPM. We need some fuel, so I'll go over here to the high cam. And so if you look at the shape of this, you know, where it says we need fuel is right in shape with you know, this map I started with. I've tuned so many of these that most of the maps I have to start with are pretty close, and this is following the same trend. And my battery is about to die, so I'm gonna make some changes there. Hopefully it'll take a couple runs to get the fueling straight. I can rev it out all the way and then throw a little timing at it and see what it does. My guess starting out before, you know, you can put it on the dynos, this was hoping it would make somewhere like 175, 185. So looks like we're not too far away from that. And that was only about 6,000 RPM. Alright, let's try this again. It's kind of hard to do holding two computers, a phone, camera, a shifter, steering wheel. This will be way easier once I figure out some screen recording software, so I'll do that next. So where the power is actually really scary with what my prediction just was. It's like right where I thought it was going to be. Now it's about 7,500 RPM. You can see it's starting to lay over a little bit, so probably take it to 8. Hopefully with a little timing this will jump up over 180. And fueling for the most part was pretty good. I think that looked like there was a couple of cells I might need to add a touch, and then above, I don't know, 7,500 RPM or so. I'm sorry, 7,000 RPM. Yeah, 7,000 RPM, it starts getting a little bit rich. So we'll pull that back out. Distributor on this car seems to be a little skanky. That RPM trace is kind of gross. Alright, we're pretty close. Hopefully a few more runs will be ready to go. Probably the most important thing to note here is how smooth the graph is. With some more timing, it'll probably smooth out a little bit more. Once you see the graphs that look real choppy, like, I mean, for example, this RPM trace, when you see the dyno graph that looks like that, it's usually a sign of engine that's unhappy. So 55, 5600. Add a little bit. Blend it in a little bit. In, even though we won't be up there. The big thing is you want everything to be nice and smooth like this. When you start having big humps, and like, say for example, you move this up there like that, and I don't know, maybe move this one down here like that. So as the engine's running through, it's going to have these big huge spikes, and that'll just make it run pretty rough. You'll definitely feel it. And if you look at the data log and monitor the injector pulse width, you'll see that it, you know, in theory should stay nice and smooth like this. As the pulse width is doing this, then the car is just going to run all jerky and nasty. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to throw 2 degrees of timing in it. See what that does. There's a couple spots here I need to smooth out a little bit. Can't see the tack, and the headlights don't work. Yeah, so I'm just going to verify the rev limiter is in a safe spot and try it again. So this is actually a little interesting. You can see everything's kind of working like normal. It pretty much freezes, goes back, freezes. I don't know, this is the type of stuff that you kind of don't really have to deal with so much on some of the higher end computers, and you know, this thing's making 1200 horsepower and just dropping signals and stuff. can get expensive pretty quick on what it tears up. Fueling was right on the money on that one. I don't need to change anything there. And I don't know, I'll make another run playing with the timing, and I think that's going to be about what we have. So it's pretty nice that once you have your first run where you go to whatever RPM it is you want to go to, like you can just watch it real time and know where you need to let off or whatever. This car's not a very good example because it's not really accepting the timing very well, but for the sake of conversation, let's turn this fan off. But I don't know, say this is a big power turbo car and I just put some timing in it and you watch it ramp up into boost and you see that the power is dropping off. You can get out of it. You don't have to complete the whole run to see what the timing's going to do, like some of the other dynos I've had in the past. I've also had it too where you're making a run and all of a sudden you see the horsepower go up way more than it should. So again, you can get out of it and make sure boost didn't go too high or distributor didn't move or whatever it is that happened. So this like real-time plot is just invaluable. I love it. I really like to find another horsepower too, so let's see if we can manipulate the timing a little bit to do that. So I also have multiple screens and an endless amount of channels that I can view. Just however you want to choose to view it. 2 monitors, pretty much data points on anything and everything you can think of for each run. It'll show you averages, it'll show you the difference, so you can click at this point and see what the difference is between whichever run it is and the reference run. Horsepower, torque. This thing's great. Alright, play with some timing. I don't know what it's going to do. Realistically, if I let it cool off for a while, it'd pick up a couple horsepower. The air intake tube on this is really small, so I'm assuming going to a larger diameter tube there would pick up some power, but I guess considering it was in 1 horsepower, what I thought it was going to make, it's not so bad. Literally on the dot, exactly what I was hoping it would make. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And the graph is just perfectly smooth. Let's see what it looks like scaling at 200. So on that note, I'm going to call this one good. It's actually supposed to be home 10 minutes ago. I still need to take this off the dyno and bring it in. Need to set the two-step up, and I'm still not real happy with the way the idle control is working on this. You swing it from 0 to 100% duty cycle and the idle barely changes. Actually confirmed the other day when we were doing all of our testing and stuff that it's working. You know, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's just not bypassing enough air. But considering when this car came in, I didn't think we were even going to get it on the dyno, and then now it's doing like down to within 1 horsepower of what I expected to do. Yeah, I'm happy. So we're going to call it good here, and yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Just realized I didn't record any runs of the car from outside of the car. So sorry about that, but I don't know, it's all a work in progress. I'll get all this figured out eventually. It's 20 times harder than I expected it to be, trying to control all this stuff and think 10 steps ahead and edit it and film it and record it and the sound and the computers, and it's a lot. So everyone that's giving me feedback and making suggestions and stuff, I really appreciate it. And maybe this one will make Clayton shut up. Axel took a poop on the floor. I guess tomorrow I'm going to try and see if I can't sort the idle control valve out. See why that's not doing what I want it to do.